Today, we pick up the newspaper, and every few weeks, you find one story or the other, be it in the newspaper, be it in the news, be it on YouTube channels, about lack of access to healthcare. Just a few months ago, I remember seeing a news story about how in Madhya Pradesh, one man carried his wife for 65 kilometers just so that she could access basic healthcare. And this is not a one-off story. You see this in all parts of the country where access to healthcare and access to high-quality healthcare is a very serious lacuna. Today, India has only 6 ICU beds for every 1 lakh people. Only 136 hospital beds for every 1,000 people. This is where the Indian voice needs to be heard. This is where the Indian voice needs to be raised. This is what we all need to be talking about. Similarly, education. We all know how important education is to us, for our families. Every time in any household children's exams comes, I have a niece who's in class 9, and we have a WhatsApp group that I think almost exists solely to discuss her maths assignments and her maths exams. So for every individual, for every household, their children's education, their children's future is one of the most important things. And yet, lakhs and lakhs of children across the country do not have access to basic, high-quality education. Every year in January, an organization called Pratham presents the Asar survey report. And year on year, that report tells us that more than 50% of children, school-going children, do not know how to read and write. Even, in fact, in the Human Index, the Human Development Index, in 2020, it said that Indians, on an average, have 12.2 years of education. By 2022, that has fallen to 11.8 years of education. This is where, as Indians, we need to raise our voice. Another news story that we often hear is that when state governments bring out advertisements for PNs, for postmasters that require 5th standard, 8th standard qualifications, you have 100 positions that come out, and you have 20,000 people who apply. People who have PhDs, people who have master's degrees, people who have MTechs. And they don't have jobs. Today, from January to April, 4.8 crore Indians are unemployed. 28.26% of Indian youth do not have jobs. So as a country, these are issues that we need to be talking about. These are issues about which we need to be loud. These are issues about which we need to be noisy. Then how is it that one wonders that on the one hand, India has talked about becoming a major superpower, or on the other hand, you have such stark indices as far as education, healthcare, employment, malnourishment goes? And I think that the recent Hindenburg report answers a lot of those questions. And that is, again, something Indians need to raise their voice about. Why is it that inequality is rising in this country? It is because some people are more favored than others. You see the fact that you have some business groups close to ruling parties in power whose net worth goes up from 2014.7.3 billion to 2022 to $140 billion. You see the fact that on the one hand, we have a country that talks about cracking down on corruption. But yet, when the Adani Group gets investments from 6 shell companies registered on the same address for 42,000 crore rupees, there is no investigation that happens on the matter. You have the LIC that loses 50,000 crores in 50 days, and yet no investigation happens on the matter. This is what Indians need to be loud and noisy about, ask questions, raise our voices, bring the central government on the discussion table to say that if we are talking about rooting out corruption, if we are talking about India being a global superpower, then we will investigate this kind of corruption that has been brought to the fore. And it is this voice of India that today is under attack. Today, anyone who wishes to criticize the government, anyone who wishes to raise their voice against the central ruling party is clamped down upon. I, as a political leader, I, as an opposition leader, have lost track of the number of defamation cases filed against me by BJP leaders for raising my voice. And today, it's not just about defamation cases. Today, every agency of the central government is being used to clamp down upon the opposition. Be it the CBI, be it the Enforcement Directorate, be it the Income Tax Department, be it police across the country. In fact, a few months ago, I was making a list of the number of cases against leaders of Aam Aadmi Party. And we are not a very old party, we are a new party. And from 2015, since the Aam Aadmi Party came to power, we have more than, I think at last count, we had 186 cases registered against Aam Aadmi Party leaders. No conviction in one single case. No corruption proved in one single case. But yet, every agency continues to attack Aam Aadmi Party and all other opposition parties. Not for the so-called corruption that any parties have done. Because, of course, in all these cases, there is not even 1% or 0.1% of conviction that happens. But today, agencies of the central government are threatening the voices that are raised against them. And I believe that at the very core is a challenge to the idea of India. Because in India, in our country, in every street, in every household, in every bogie of every train, at every chaiwala, every Indian has a right to a voice, and every Indian has a right to voice their opinion. And this right must be protected. Thank you.